Hey YouTube, just finished my workout and today I want to talk to you about why securities laws matter. I hear you say, what a freaking boring topic. Well, I'd like to share with you how it relates to Bitcoin and why it really matters and why it is extremely exciting today to really understand the changes that can happen in securities laws. So first and foremost, this really was it was about 1 year after Bitcoin, 2009, Bitcoin was invented, Bitcoin was created, and immediately the Bitcoin community started focusing on the different use cases. I was tinkering around with Bitcoin. I was writing the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust. It was the first published book in the world to include Bitcoin. And I was experimenting with lots of the innovation that was happening there because a big part of the book was about investing in financial technology to usher in the next wave of innovation and the reinvention of banking. At the time, there were only companies like, there was crypto stocks where you could buy Bitcoin denominated bonds. You had GLBSE, the Global Bitcoin Stock Exchange, which was based in the UK. And some of these really early videos, what else did you, Havelock Investments, where you could invest in Bitcoin IPOs. And essentially they just, the thinking at the time was that because it was based upon Bitcoin and Bitcoin wasn't classified as money, therefore it was, you didn't really need to worry about whether it was a security or not. And that was the thinking. They all got shut down. And so it was around this time in 2011 when I spoke at the first Bitcoin conference to launch the book. And we decided, because Bitcoin was creating a bank that existed outside the financial system, that we would focus on securities laws instead. Now, what I didn't know is the freaking journey that it would take us on. So fast forward 10 years, and we're here where we are today, where I think finally a lifetime, a decade of work is going to manifest into something really, really serious. I remember in 2010, we had a simple vision. No venture capitalists would invest in any of the Bitcoin companies. There was companies like Kraken who were just very strange Bitcoin exchanges, and no venture capitalist was interested in investing. So we wanted to do something where we could support the growth of financial technology and pure self-interest. I wanted to implement the investment theses that I covered in the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust, and the belief that investing in lots of financial technology companies, because the future of finance is going to look very different from the past. So Bank to the Future came along. We were based in the UK at the time, trying to create a UK bank, decided that we would chunk it down into securities. So we spent 3 years and had to become a director of 2 different associations just to get a license and have a registration with the regulator at the time, was called the FSA, and to allow UK investors to invest in UK businesses. Now, we wanted to support the global financial technology and Bitcoin industry, and there were very few companies at the time. So it was a niche to say, and it took us 3 years to get there, and we still weren't able to fulfill the mission. But it led a chain of events that led to, in the UK, the creation. So at the time I was a founding director of the UK Crowdfunding Association, and then later a founding director of the UK Digital Currency Association. It led to a chain of events and conversations with UK regulators that eventually led to that registration, useless as it was, but the ability to do it. That led to the birth of the equity crowdfunding industry. And then at the time, President Obama and a consultation group were looking at the work that happened in the UK, and they decided to change securities laws from 1933 and 1941 and came up with something called the Jobs Act that was designed to open up who could invest based upon the jobs and businesses that were getting funded in the UK. So the Jobs Act took several years to come through. In fact, it's still having certain changes, but certain laws were changed and certain rules were changed. And then that happened globally. There was a cascading effect around the world, but we still don't have the types of laws and regulations that allow for the way securities work in line with the world that we live in today and the technology that exists thanks to everything that happened on Bitcoin. Let's rewind a bit further. In the meantime, you had all those companies, they all got shut down, where you could invest in Bitcoin IPOs and Bitcoin bonds that were paying out yield in Bitcoin. And some of those investments actually turned out to be great. I've still got investments that were shut down but paid off Bitcoin, and were some of the highest performing investments out there. So investors had to be protected against some of these investments because of securities laws. So then you I remember then everyone started talking about colored coins and how you could launch assets on top of Bitcoin. And one of the very first it was called an ICO, initial coin offerings, was a company called Mastercoin, or not a company, a protocol called Mastercoin. And it was set up by the Mastercoin Foundation. It's now called Omni, and it allowed you to create tokens on top of Bitcoin. Then you have projects like Counterparty. This is where the early digital tokens were created upon. For example, Tether, the world's largest stablecoin, was created on top of Omni. And still exists today, but it's a protocol that's not commonly used. And really the protocol got disrupted by Ethereum, and now you're starting to get network, early effects in other types of networks, like the Liquid that exists on top of Bitcoin, that has had some early projects that we were backing, like some gaming projects with Samson Mao. And now the infamous Bitcoin bond that I'll be going through, that I've been rabbiting on about all this week. And if you didn't check out the recording yesterday, I know it was Thanksgiving for those of you in America, and I expect a big spike in traffic because it was epic. And if you didn't watch the episode with myself, Max Kaiser, and Samson Mao, the CSO of Blockstream, then make sure you check out the previous video. It came out on Thanksgiving, and Max actually gave up 2 hours of his Thanksgiving in order to just discuss the geek of the Bitcoin volcano bond. Anyway, in 2015, the regulations weren't fit for purpose. At Bank to the Future, we were looking and shopping for a globally minded regulator. Relocated, moved away from the UK. I personally moved to Hong Kong, and then the company found a regulator that would back a global vision, and that was our regulator in Cayman Islands. Over time, that really sparked off. This was when we were able to launch the very first Bitcoin bond in 2014. Then you had many companies that were issuing tokens on top of Bitcoin, things that were being funded by the Bitcoin community. So we funded many of the early stage companies. Then something really interesting happened in 2016. In 2016, Bitfinex decided to reinvent the process of how to disaster recover from a hack that would have sent them into bankruptcy. They issued a digital token that existed on top of Omni. They created it where it was an IOU. You could exchange it in the future if Bitfinex recovered, for the face value. And then it started trading, so it could trade at a premium. You could convert it to equity, or it could trade at a discount. And it created one of the most innovative products that led to the recovery of Bitfinex and the growth of the company. And full disclosure, I am a shareholder in that company as a result of that 2016 innovation. That was, you were able to swap that token for equity on Bank to the Future because we had this new globally minded regulator. We also had the US side and a US broker dealer to onboard US, but certain restrictions were existing there. Now, fast forward, and our industry has come on leaps and bounds. We've gone into trillion-dollar market caps. All of the venture capitalists are now scrambling to invest in the industry and catch up. Some of the forward-thinking ones were investing as early as 2013, 2014, but it was still a niche. Then this emergence of ICOs became a huge thing in 2017, mainly fueled by the simplicity of creating tokens on Ethereum. Everyone started ignoring securities laws again, thought that they don't exist, and then we had a regulatory crackdown that led to a ginormous bear market that lasted almost 2 years as a result of all these tokens that were ignoring securities laws. So when people say screw securities laws matter. But what we do need is securities laws that work for the age that we are building now. So now let's fast forward to 2020. I go on before the pandemic, I go on the stage in Miami and tell people there's this little new emerging industry. It's only about 250 million locked up in smart contracts, but this DeFi industry is going to be huge. Rewind forward 1 year and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, hundreds of $billions locked up in contracts, but everybody's again ignoring securities laws. They think these are governance tokens, we don't need to worry about these things, lo and behold, you're getting regulators around the world that are then going to start looking at how this fits into securities. The crypto lending industry evolves, and then America starts coming up and saying, we believe that these are securities laws because you're lending out tokens that are not Bitcoin, and therefore it may be securities, and bringing us right where we are today. So at Bank to the Future, if you are one of our long-term investors, we've had over 150,000 that invested in this industry. We've had very large wealth effects that have been created by investing in many of these multi-billion-dollar unicorns, people that are building Bitcoin retirement plans. You will know that we have had to go through several regulatory shifts. And I completely apologize for some of the experience that you have had to go through, because we have to securities laws change, and then we have to change how we onboard, and then we have to do that. And at the moment, we're going through a process of every investor on Bank to the Future having to adjust their profile as securities laws change. So at the moment, I believe that we are finally in a real shifting moment in time. We end up having to restrict to certain types of investors to meet, and we spend over a decade going into global securities laws, building custom onboarding experience to comply with securities laws in each jurisdiction. But then we hit this moment today. And today that brings us to a moment in time where the El Salvador government decides to make Bitcoin legal tender, decides that they're going to use some of the models that even Bitfinex invented when they went through the hack recovery. And you have this Bitcoin volcano bond that you really should check out the video with Max Geyser and Samson Mao and all the previous videos I've been doing all this week to understand what a big deal this is. But they dropped one big bombshell. Bitfinex said that they're going to support the issuance of the bond. We're speaking with the Bitfinex team on how Bank to the Future can support that. But here's the great thing. El Salvador come along and say, we want to issue this bond, self-interest. They have a need, they have a vision, they have Bitcoin City that they want to bring. They believe that supporting Bitcoin properly, not these fake countries that have said, we'll take all the jobs, but we won't make any change. We're not going to make Bitcoin legal tender, or the regulators say, we're not going to change anything, even if the government wants to do it. This time, we believe that El Salvador is at a certain stage where they can write custom securities laws designed for the technology in the world that we live today. So many of the greatest minds in Bitcoin and lawyers and professionals and everyone is now putting their head together with a very tight deadline to create securities laws that work for the only country in the world that has Bitcoin as legal tender, the only country in the world that has a vision to build Bitcoin City and to build something fit for purpose. So my commitment to you is that at Bank to the Future, I believe this is the pinnacle of a lifetime of work, 2 decades of work, 1 decade focusing on securities laws. And I believe that finally in 2022, we could have, due to this ginormous need, the reinvention of securities laws that are built for purpose, and a cascading wealth effect that's generated through those onboarding into the Bitcoin industry that is a model for other countries to want to adjust their processes until finally you get those with the largest markets today will be the last to adjust. And I believe you have a game theoretical scenario that starts now, begins and gets excited in January 2022. And if you are a Bank to the Future customer, here is my commitment to you and a Bank to the Future investor. We will do whatever is within our power to be able to adjust to these securities laws that are fit for purpose, that allow more people to onboard into this sector and work with regulators that really understand what the impact that this has had over the last decade on the financial future in one of the largest wealth redistributions that we have seen in the birth of a multi-trillion-dollar industry that is only just getting started. So that's my commitment to you. The Bank to the Future team are doing whatever they can. I know that we've had to restrict certain investment opportunities as a result of regulations getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And I am all for regulations that protect investors. I just believe a lot of what's happening in regulations right now is not protecting investors. And I want to make sure that we're working with the regulators that are understanding that investors certainly, protections for investors are very, very important, but let's focus on what is needed in order to protect investors and gain access to one of the most exciting and interesting times to invest in the future of finance. And so that is my commitment to you. As I said, we apologize for any of the investors that have had to re-onboard, that may have had to provide additional documentation. But we have done one thing at Bank to the Future. We were the world's first crypto securities business with the longest standing company in Bitcoin. And we survived all of these regulatory crackdowns because we've always made sure that we stay on the right side of this change at the same time as making a commitment to stretching the barriers, stretching the possibilities. And El Salvador to us in 2022, I will do whatever we can, and our team will do whatever we can in order to put together what we think could be securities laws fit for purpose that fulfills that original vision. If you look back on this YouTube, go far back on the Bank to the Future YouTube channel, look at some of those really early videos where we were, what the vision is. And finally, I think a decade later, it all comes full circle. So here is my message to you. In 2022, I believe that this is a real cascading effect. Securities laws matter because it determines the opportunity that's available to you. And right now, being able to invest in the reinvention of the financial system, from my perspective, historical performance is no indication of future returns. I can't give financial advice, I can't give investment advice, I can't give tax advice, and I can't give legal advice on this. However, I've been sharing over the last few weeks through a completely free masterclass on retirementplanb.com, and so many of you asked us to keep it up there. We were going to take it down. We've left it up there because I want to share with you how I'm adjusting to this change, because I genuinely believe that you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history, and El Salvador is doing what they can do to make sure that you have the opportunity, with custom securities laws, with Bitcoin as legal tender, to stay on the right side of this change. The IMF can attack it, the dollar can attack it, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, there's risks to factor in. But here's the thing that I commit to. I will do whatever is within my power to try and adjust to this change so that we can really fulfill the vision. The technology exists, the desire exists, the understanding and the desire from countries to sift securities laws exist. But this is a global movement. There's hiccups along the way, but the reinvention of the financial system is coming. And it all started in a room with about 50 people in that first Bitcoin conference that had a vision to reinvent money, and now we've got everything that's come from that. So, as I always end, I'm going to go up now. We've got a lot of meetings to fit in, got a lot of stuff to happen, but please be patient with us. We'll do whatever we can to support this new custom securities laws and try and open up our investment products as far and as wide as they can. So in advance, we have to re-onboard all of our clients at the moment. And so if you don't have a banktothefuture.com account, we will try, re-onboard. You have to go through that process. We have to play within the system that we have at the moment. But at the same time, I think there's rapid change, and we will make sure that we are on the right side of that change. And I want to make sure that you get yourself on the right side of that change too. So always remember, you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some people are going to get hurt. Others are going to do really well. Make sure you're on the right side of that change. El Salvador is doing their piece. Bank to the Future is doing their piece. I'll do my piece. Educate yourself. Subscribe to this channel. Like this channel. Share this video, and I'll keep giving you updates, and you get live play-by-play commentary as the reinvention of the financial system and the future of finance changes. Peace, love, unity, peace.